Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Give Freedom a Chance, the podcast from the Libertarian Party UK, where we try to discuss the world that surrounds us and everything that is, conspiring to deprive us of our freedom and how we can fight back. Thank you for being here. I know it's the weekend and Christmas is looming upon us, and so not everybody is in the mood to discuss heavy topics like this one, but we thought that actually this could be a good time, because when the year is coming to an end, everyone gets into a more reflective mode. Everyone is starting to think, what have I accomplished in the last 12 months? And, what can be the challenges that all of us are facing? And I think that probably one of the things that is not exactly high on our priority list is actually the issue of intellectual property. It looks like an abstract thing. I think that it's not really interesting. I don't know, if you're not a content producer, it doesn't really interest you at all. But in reality, the thing is very, very important. And it could be one of the ways that, the government and everyone that tries to deprive us of our freedom can actually attack our liberties and actually make our lives a little bit more complicated. So in reality, we just wanted to talk with someone who is very into what people call the content economy. So someone that is, amassed a quite sizable following on TikTok and other social media platforms, and has been quite vocal in the past about the issues of IP. And then again, we will have a couple of representatives from the Libertarian Party UK, because, to be honest, the issue of intellectual property is one of the most thorny issues that we are facing. And some people say that this is where the whole libertarian vision grinds to a halt. Actually, we're not of that opinion and stuff, but actually we will discuss that. And let me just bring all the people that we have here and turn the microphone on, because obviously otherwise it would be quite inconvenient. And here we go. Hello, everyone. So we have Ryan Matthews, actually known as Ryan.m on TikTok. I think it's only TikTok, or you're also in other social media platforms, Ryan?
Yeah, pretty much just TikTok. Like my Insta's just me, myself, and my friends. So.
Oh yeah, cool. So it's not just so you're not offended if I call you a TikToker, because nowadays I see that some people.
I'm actually a proponent of TikTok. I think it disseminates information in a good way. So.
Okay, cool. But actually, I know it's really tricky, because obviously you're way younger than I am. So I'm offended if you call me a boomer, because I'm a Gen X. So obviously, just to put things first, to say, yeah, I'm a Gen X. So the whole idea of super short content doesn't really appeal to me. But actually, I think I'm missing a big opportunity, because TikTok is very popular nowadays, and it can be used not just to spread misinformation and stuff, but actually to talk about substantive stuff. So you've been doing a great job, by the way, right?
Appreciate it.
Okay, and then again, we will have our own members of the Committee of the Libertarian Party. And we have Ben, also Wes's coordinator for the Libertarian Party UK. Hello, Ben.
Good afternoon.
Okay, lovely. And then we have our very own ANCAP, Marco Bocci. The ANCAP flag is behind you again. Hello, Marco Bocci, coordinator for London and the southeast of England. Hi, Marco.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here.
Okay, lovely. So we will work on your backdrop a little bit in the future, because it's not exactly great, but that's not, we're not, about this minor things and stuff, backdrop.
We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. I should put some lights on and everything. But again, so we just wanted to say, okay, intellectual property, it's a big subject. And usually we hear people talking about it in academic backgrounds and stuff. People there are talking very highbrow conversations about what exactly is intellectual property, how copyright laws been moving on from protecting the author to just becoming a tool of enslavement. Everybody that's working on the internet knows exactly copyright strikes, how awful they are, because, I don't know, Universal or some other big music company decides that, no, you're not allowed to use 5 seconds of my music, you have to pay. And then authors say, I don't know, you're not allowed to use anything. But in reality, I think that intellectual property is really a big issue, because nowadays, everyone is into the so-called content economy. Even if you're not making money, if your major source of income is not creating content, all of us are creating content. Every time you put something out on social media, you are creating content. And so you could be involved in this whole intellectual property thing. So libertarian point of view in general should be, yes, private property sacred, and so everyone should do anything in their power to protect private property, because it's the foundation of all of our other freedoms. But then again, you think, well, what can be the role of the state and everything? And then intellectual property can be used as a tool to just limit our creativity and stuff. So Ryan, in your experience on TikTok and other social media and stuff, what has been your experience about what people actually think of intellectual property? Is not a big thing on their head, or what is kind of the position? What is your position? What have you been thinking about this stuff?
Yeah, so I guess I don't know how far back to go, but like the first time my mate, he had a Manchester City fan page on Instagram, and he amassed like 10,000 followers on it. And I was like, hey, let me set up a Redbubble store. Redbubble's kind of like a print-on-demand website. And then at that point, we got taken down. So we put the letters M followed by C followed by F followed by C, MCFC, on a mug, just black letters on a white mug. And then we got taken down. And then we got into an email chain with Manchester City Football Club because they owned the letter M followed by C followed by F followed by C. So at that point, I was like, okay, this is weird. Then I looked into intellectual property, and as a libertarian would, I discovered Stefan Kinsella. But then when I started making videos on TikTok, I realized most people don't even know what intellectual property is. They just think it's like, because a lot of the time people have pirated stuff, right? People have gone onto 123 movies, all that stuff. But then when you ask them straight up, hey, should we abolish copyright? They're like, no, because we should care about the creators. And I agree, we should, but I don't think it's something a government granted monopoly should be used as a tool.
So yeah, actually, the whole point is that it's very, very interesting, because I think I remember a few years ago there was a car company that said that they wanted to copyright the thing of having 3 numbers in a certain progression. So if you are Porsche and you say, well, I don't know, Volvo is making a car that is the 912, and you're just thinking, hold on, no, you can't do that, because only I am allowed to do that, because I have the 911, and then I had the 918 or whatever. So, and that was a big problem, because you say, well, you don't own the numeral system. You cannot say you copyright the fact of having 3 numbers, one after the other. And then Peugeot did the same. They say, oh yeah, 105, that's ours. And then 205, that's ours. And so you can't do that. So it's becoming, on one end, very complicated. And on the other hand, you're just saying, well, you can't copyright everything. If I want to do something that is, I don't know, Mancunian community farmers club, I say, oh yeah, that's it, that's MCFC. Oh no, you can't do that, because otherwise you're implying that you are connected to Manchester City Football Club. No, you can't do that. You cannot copyright that, but apparently they do, which is because copyright laws have been, stuck in the past and everything. So in reality, I think that this is a much bigger thing than most people think. So I don't know, Ben, what is kind of your take on all this stuff? So, because there is the risk of actually having, government overreach into this kind of things as well.
Yeah, I think it's not obvious to me that intellectual property shouldn't be treated like any other kind of property. I do feel fairly strongly that there is a role for the state. If there is a role for the state, it's in protecting private property. I think the issue comes down to it's much easier to draw a boundary around, say, my land or my mobile phone, for example. We know the extent of this mobile phone. The area outside my mobile phone is not included. I own this, maybe not the area around it. But I think obviously ideas are a lot more intangible, like you say with the MCFC example there. You can kind of see the intention and behind that, as a reference to a famous football club. But obviously, I think most people would probably agree we don't really want that to apply to the farmers club or whatever that example was. So I think that really is the issue. To me, it's not obvious that we should treat private intellectual property any differently, fundamentally differently to property. But I do think there are issues unique to intellectual property that do need to be looked at and resolved. The kind of intangibility of it, that I think there is input, there is effort that goes in, and I think that to some extent the rewards from that effort do need to be protected by a legal system.
Yeah, I know, but this in reality, I think that we are coming to a point where you're just saying, yes, the whole point is saying people that are just going there and saying, oh yeah, if there is a painting or if there is a movie or if there is anything, you say, well, it's tangible and stuff, so of course it should be protected. So if I'm drawing a picture or anything, or if I create a logo and stuff, it's my intellectual capacity or my capacity in terms of design, where I'm designing something that is uniquely mine. And if you're copying that, you're infringing on the work that I do because you're not paying me what I owe. So if you want to use it, you just send me a letter and stuff. But the whole point is that, well, if I write something on Facebook and Facebook uses it to train its LLC algorithm, its AI algorithm, and then it's making money out of it because it's paying people something, and say, well, your stuff wasn't specifically designed to be content, but it's been used as content. So the whole point is saying the whole difference between tangible and intangible becomes really, really tricky. I don't know, Ryan, what is your kind of, well, not just your opinion on that. You say, well, where do we draw the line? So is that a movie is tangible, a picture is tangible, but a message I send to my friends is not, or what? I don't know. It's a bit confusing.
So the thing I think a lot of people often conflate is fraud law and intellectual property. So for example, if I was selling the MCFC mug and I said, this is from Manchester City Football Club, and I gave it to someone, and it turned out it was just me writing MCFC on a mug, that's fraud because I've violated what we've agreed upon. I've said it's from Manchester City, or I've said I'm giving an Evian water and it's not actually Evian, right? So that's a case for fraud law, and it's completely outside intellectual property. Why? And is why I think IP we don't actually need. And things like NDAs and trade secrets, they can happen on a contractual basis, but no third party should be prohibited from using ideas which are not scarce.
Yeah, I know. This is kind of the point in saying it's really difficult to just draw a line. And actually, one of our followers, which obviously, if you have any question, just pop them on and I'll read them, reply, and then put you on screen. And actually, you can. This is the beautiful thing about having a live show, is that we can interact directly with you. So the Silver Appleyard on our chat said, okay, well, can I copyright a cake recipe? And if not, why? And I answered to her in the, I assume her, if it's him, sorry, you haven't been very clear on that point. Well, the problem is provenance. I say, how can you prove that you are the author? If I'm just making a new recipe for apple pie, and it's great, you have to prove that you put an innovation on an ancient recipe. So your twist, are you the first to do that? Are you not copying anyone? So one of the components of copyright is the fact that you can prove that you are the author. In the case of a recipe, that is quite tricky because no one can claim to own that. So one can go there and say, well, the first ice cream that was ever made was made in the court of Catherine of Medici, Queen of France, back in the 16th century, and that was the first ice cream ever made. And then you say, well, okay, so we should all pay copyright every time we're making an ice cream. Was she the first to have an idea? Well, no, not exactly, because in Florence, they've been doing it for a while. In Sicily, they've been doing it for a couple of centuries. People say in the Arabic world, they started before. So the issue is provenance. Can you prove you are the first to do it? And Manchester City Football Club cannot prove they are the first to put the letters MCFC together. At that point, it means that you should prove that you are infringing my copyright in terms of saying you are implying that you are linked to my football club. And so if you're using blue and white, they say, aha, gotcha. You're using this MCFC. You're thinking that this is original. You should pay me copyright. But if not, that is the tricky issue. And then again, so Marco, the point of saying what can be actually copyrighted is actually very tricky, because can you copyright private conversations? Can you copyright anything that is put on social media? So the terms of services of most social media say that if you're putting something on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, you can go there and you say, yeah, you can go there and say, well, you know, they can use it how they see fit because you're ceding your rights. But then again, you're thinking, okay, well, why? How? Where is the limit?
Yeah, I think Ryan has pointed at what is the main difference between actual property, physical property, and intellectual property. While physical property is by its nature scarce, the ideas are not scarce, they are infinite virtually. So what I think is the key in answering the question, can I copyright this or that, is the following. I believe copyrights and any type of rights are to be assigned where there is something, where is the creative process, where what you have actually produced is a product of your own mind, or you put something original onto it. As you alluded, it can be beginning from something that is already common knowledge, which is mostly the case with new invention. We start from what is already common knowledge, and you add something to it, you give it an original spin to it. Then in theory, if that's something that you've done and you believe this is something unique, and by all means the market assigns value to what you have produced, meaning that you managed to sell it and a lot of people want it, then this copyright, this is something worthy of being protected. Because someone has just said, can I copyright my recipe? Yeah, by all means, just go ahead. If your recipe, it's not very popular and no one makes money from it, there's not much point in protecting it, I think. So the main point of copywriting something is your production of your mind, and is it valuable? And on that topic of how do we protect it, I am a firm believer that it's something that the state should be involved as little as possible, and it should be involved in terms of providing a legal system that adequately protects the original productions, which could be music, could be writing, could be books, could be any kind of things. And in terms of the expiry of these rights, I know there are, Luca, you've pointed at one of the paradoxes that some proponents of perpetual intellectual property rights are finding, is that if we did that today, everything would be copyrighted, and you would have to pay someone or the descendants of someone. So that's obviously an absurd case. So I believe there's a strong case to have IP rights limited in some shape or form. Obviously, then there's the details, which is the devil's in the detail on how to do it. But I think it needs to be tied up to the life of the inventor, of the person who created it. But then this opens up. Is my personal view, obviously, and very much open for debate.
Yeah, it's the proverbial can of worms, or Pandora's box, if you like. I think there is a lot of people in the conversation and stuff, and obviously love to have your questions and everything. So Richard DeHaas is asking us, is saying, well, would there be any convincing and compelling case to abolish IP rights altogether? And we are actually very, very keen to just kind of reply to that. And it's saying that is very tricky, because if you are removing altogether the whole point of intellectual property, what is the point of just making music and stuff? So I go down, I write a piece of music, and I put it out, and then everybody is allowed to just do it myself. And so everybody can copy that, and they're not paying me anything to use that. That is actually very, very critical. Again, there is another issue saying, well, I'm a pharmaceutical company, whatever bad we can think of big pharma and everything, and there is plenty bad to think about them. But if I'm investing billions of pounds into developing medicine, and then I want to recoup my investment and obviously make a profit for the shareholders, and then if everybody else is allowed to make it because it's for the greater good, well, what's the point in me investing billions of pounds if my intellectual property is not protected? So I think it's very, very tricky, but I wanted to get your feel of the panel on that. So Ben, Ryan, okay, who wants to go first? Ryan, you want to go first?
Yeah,
okay,
so
lovely. Go ahead.
Of course, get rid of all intellectual property, because I think it's an impediment to an individual's right to use resources as they see fit. I just want to quickly touch on the funding mechanism. So when we think about insulin, right? Cutting edge technology, especially like the COVID vaccines, you're going to arrive at the same conclusion independently a lot of the time. And just because someone arrives as at a chemical formula, 3 days later, months later, should that give us the right to give them a legal threat of force to stick them in jail if they don't pay, obviously, the money? And I would say no. And that's kind of where I draw the line. And funding mechanisms, of course, you've got in economics the first mover advantage. But even more than the first mover advantage, there could be, for example, let's say a scientist, that's the guy who's going to cure cancer, etc. And he invents something really cool, then people steal it. The next time they want another medication invented, who are they going to go to? The copycat? Or are they going to be like, hey, mate, we really want you to help fund the next thing. Can you please help us? He's like, no, only if you give me money up front. So in the absence of intellectual property, we might see a framework shift from right now, which is post-production revenue and royalties and all that, to pre-production revenue. So people getting money before the thing is invented. And then it will go to the distributors, which are essentially the copycats.
Yeah, I know it's really good. So, guys, I'm receiving a lot of questions from our chat, because the chat is gone berserk, and that we actually had some issues when we looked at the topic and we said, oh my God, intellectual property, nobody's going to be interested in that. It's so complicated and stuff, so controversial and everything. God forbid. No, it's great. We have someone from Argentina following us. Hey, hola, which is amazing, by the way. And there is some guys who say, well, IP undermines self-property. Consider this example. You cannot repeat the words of a playwright on a stage for money. The rights in your vocal cords in a certain shape become the playwrighters. And then again, you're starting to think, your vocal cords are not exactly subject of rights. So your vocal cord is an instrument, as in the same way Fender or Gibson does not get any money if I'm playing something on a guitar. Don't be, because I'm awful. I actually can't play guitar. I was an awful bassist when I was young, and then my brother down here, he just sold my bass and my
played for it I played with it for a while, not very well.
Yeah, you played with it for a while badly, and then I came back home when I was in Germany and to say, where is my bass? Where is my amplifier? And he said, oh yeah, I sold it.
Honestly,
okay, cool. I'm cool.
You want to go there?
Not cool. I want to go there because it's still,
I don't think the viewers will be interested in our.
I don't know. Yeah, but it's being personable and everything. It's being personable and just liven things up. I'm thinking Fender doesn't get any money if I use my precision bass to play, I don't know, Bring On the Night from the Police. They don't get any money. Sting does, because he wrote the music. He wrote the music, he gave me information, I'm using that information with my skill to produce music, I should pay him something. I don't pay Fender because I bought the bass from them and then I bought the amplifier. So I don't pay them because it's already included in the thing. But then again, I can understand how some people think that it can be constraining. But then again, you have the problem of how practical it is. If you give no incentive to people to come up with creative solutions and monetize their skills, no one is doing anything. No one is playing anything. No one is creating anything, because then they're just saying, well, if that guy can steal my stuff and I've gone through the effort to do that and I'm not being repaid in some way, that's one thing. Another thing is Big Pharma spends £1 billion creating experimental medicine and then sells it for 50 and then makes a big profit of that. But that's a completely different thing, I'm thinking. So again, Ben, what is, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead. You wanted to go next, Marco? Absolutely.
Yes, no, what I wanted to say, I mean, I understand the point that Ryan is trying to make about IP being a brake on innovation, you know, it being a sort of stopping it. And the problem as well, though, if you remove all of those protections, is, as Luca said, there's no more incentive. So you remove also the incentive, and your sort of hypothesis of moving the incentives ahead, sort of before one is actually inventing anything. I wanted to say, yeah, I mean, it would work if an inventor would be like always inventing new things all the time. Truth is that most of the times they invent something worthy once in their lifetime. So they've done it once, their idea got stolen, they might not do it again about something else. So I still think that the best way to go about this is some limited form of protection, and limited in time, which is the main sort of the main point. Is you don't want to stop innovation forever. You just want to reward the person inventing it and allow this person to enjoy the fruits of their labor, which is products of their mind. After that, after they've passed away and the family have inherited the just profits from his idea, it becomes public domain and anybody can just use it after that. I think we will get to the right point.
I think this is how copyright laws used to work up until not very long ago. So you said that you are the author of books. You make a book and everything. It stays in. You have copyright for something like 50 years, and then you can extend it maximum to 100 years. If you're not alive, it goes on to your estate. And then at that point, it's impossible to renew it any further, because it means that this passes on to the public domain. And this is actually something that is been happening. But I think I saw on YouTube something that said that there is a lot of stuff that goes into public domain because stuff that was made 100 years ago or 75 years ago. And at that point, they said that in a few years, Mickey Mouse from Disney could go into the public domain, because it's been from Steamboat Willie, that was the first cartoon produced by Disney. In a couple of years, it should go into public domain. But then again, Disney is saying, don't rush so fast. No, don't get cheeky. You're allowed to use exactly the version of Mickey Mouse that was in that precise movie. So only that, not the evolution that we did, not the character itself. So again, it's very complicated. And absolutely, Brian, you can absolutely go next. And because that's a bit tricky. But then again, you're thinking, well, if I'm allowed just for my life and not enough, how long is long enough? Again, and how am I allowed to say no one is allowed to use or modify the stuff that I produce? What is the reasonable level of protection that you can get? It cannot be an absolute thing. So Universal, say, I'm thinking there are a lot of channels on YouTube and stuff that are doing music critic and stuff, and they're using beats. The law says that you can use around 5 seconds, but then sometimes they say, oh no, you're not allowed to use it. Otherwise, I'm taking down your video. I say, well, is this fair or not? If I'm discussing the production of someone, it doesn't mean that I can play in its entirety. If you play it in its entirety, the rights should go to the rights owner. But then again, if you are blocking me from commentating on that and saying this is crap, I don't know, Supergirl, the new trailer came out, it's rubbish in my opinion. Am I allowed to say it? Or DC movies can come to me and say you're not allowed to speak to that because you're not saying good things about my property. So Ryan, what is your take? Am I going completely off topic or something like that?
No, that is on topic. But I just wanted to come back on what our friend said about inhibiting innovation. So I wanted to go back to 1789 actually. There was a kid named William Slater. So when we talk about when the US became the industrial powerhouse of the world, there was a time where they were actively encouraging industrial spies. And old Slater Mill was one of the first cotton spinning wheels in America. And funnily enough, it was brought to America by an industrial spy who stole the process, called William Slater. And then in Britain, he was a British guy, he was called Slater the Traitor. And this is arguably the start of the US Industrial Revolution. So it's interesting because because nowadays the US holds the most patents in the world, yet they were when they had a lot of this growth, it was when they were encouraging IP theft. So that's why nowadays, when I see DeepSeek kind of copy OpenAI or Sam Altman accuse them of copying, I'm like, fair game. And that's why I also wanted to touch on AI because I'm such a proponent of AI, I have to be even more anti-IP. And I'd love to hear the panel's thoughts on whether we should support companies like OpenAI and DeepSeek, or should we protect IP because the nature of their product is recycling other people's copyrighted ideas.
Yeah, no, this is actually the big issue because most people are saying, okay, I've been writing online for forever, for ages. I started up in the 2000s and stuff, and I was doing translations of articles in English because in Italy, where I lived and I live now again, not many people were aware of Gary North or other libertarian authors and stuff, and so I was translating stuff for consumption in Italian. And so if someone else is using that, so if OpenAI is grabbing my translations that I did back in 2010 and is using it to train their model or their translation model, I used to be a translator, I used to get paid for translate as a translator, as a professional translator. You're using my skills in order to train a model on which you're going to make people pay to use. At that point, I should be compensated in some way. But if you are giving money to everyone that has been used by the LLM to train itself, it becomes impractical and impossible, and you don't have progress. Ben, you wanted to pitch in on that. I'm not sure if on this exactly or something else. Just go ahead. Just go ahead. We'll just go ahead. Go as it goes. Come on.
I'll go for a bit of a ramble. So it was a while ago. Sorry, I just wanted to respond to I think you gave an example about a cancer researcher, a scientist who develops, he's the guy who's going to crack cancer, and then, who's going to crack cancer too. We're going to go to this guy. I believe you referred to it as a pre-production revenue. It took me a moment to have a think about that. I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it only shifts the question of where is this chap's incentive to where is the incentive for the company that's paying him. So I think we talked about some being agreed that he's going to be paid for. Well, why would pharmaceutical company A have an incentive to pay him at all when they know that as soon as they start outputting, I imagine it's a drug, perhaps they start outputting a drug, it's only going to take, well, let's imagine the marginal costs are super low. Like the upfront costs are high. This chap wants $1 million. The marginal costs are super low. Company B could start outputting the same drug next week. They're not going to make any money, right? So I think I can see where that model would incentivize the inventor or the researcher themselves, but not the company. I don't think the investment's going to come from that. And I do think that, well, incentives really need to be protected. I mean, that's the kind of the libertarian worldview, right? It's that human beings kind of need incentive to put in hard work and effort, whether that's sowing and crops, or whether that's writing a novel. I do think we need to be protected. I do agree with you guys, though. I think on the time limited issue, and I think the precedent really should be limited to, let's protect that first mover advantage, and let's make sure it's robust in industries where that's vulnerable. And I think that's true more than ever in the digital age. Say you write a novel, you're a publisher, right? Someone gives you a novel, you start publishing it. It will take quite a while for other people. Say 500 years ago, they've got to set all the keys. That's going to take them months. Today, they could just copy and paste every single word and have it on the ebook store in an hour from publication, right? So I think that first mover advantage does need some protection.
Well, from publication. If it happens like it happens in the media world, I used to work in television and stuff, and so if you are in the IPs and stuff, and say, well, sometimes movies are out before they are out in cinemas because the distributor gets hold of a hard drive. At least a few years ago, that's how they were distributed. They would send hard drives around, and so someone in the courier would just know, oh yeah, this is coming from Universal. This is the new, I don't know, Superman movie. So I'm just taking off, copying the hard drive, sending it to my mates, and then it's out on torrent in, I don't know, on Pirate Bay before the movie is out. And it's a perfect copy, which explains why nowadays they're not shipping hard drives anymore, because that was a risk. But again, it's very, very, very tricky, because some guys in the chat are saying, oh yeah, well, it depends. You say, well, you're not allowed to put a copy on, don't copy on the drug. But then you go to the generic versions of that and saying, well, after 10 years, your copyright runs out. Everybody's allowed to make a generic version of the drug, which obviously costs a lot less. And then it becomes, if you want it extended, it's a risk. So Ryan, I think you just said you wanted something to reply to something. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So our friend mentioned we should protect the first mover advantage, and how, yes, sure, that's good for the scientist you mentioned, but not for the company who's paying the guy. So what I would say as an example or an idea could be these distribution channels. So these companies are now prepaying the scientists, but now have distribution channels perhaps already in place with a Tesco or a Sainsbury's, saying that once X thing is invented, we will be the sole consumer of you and you only. And that will protect first mover advantage to an extent. But what will it not do? It will not lead to the kind of oligopolies we have in place today in the pharmaceutical industry. And yeah, that was just my point directly to that. Can go back to whoever wants to go next.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ben, you wanted to reply to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think in the circumstances where there is a robust first move advantage, and I would be convinced that there's no adverse effects on long-term incentives. Absolutely, I'd be the first to reduce the scope of the state and scrap it. Why not? I don't like monopolies as much as the next man, but I do think that you must be able to imagine some circumstance where there isn't a first mover advantage, or a diminished one. And do you think, Ryan, that maybe having a short period, say 5 years, say just I know it's it has to be arbitrary, right? But pick a 5-year period, say, for a drug, and you say make as much money in those 5 years as you can, and then it's free. And then all you're really doing in the long term, think about lifespans are quite long and hundreds of years. All you're really doing is delaying the release of drugs by 5 years each time. So really, in the long run, there's no cost. But what you are doing is really incentivizing innovation. Now, like I said, if innovation does sprout up, and this is why I think we should do experiments in the real world, and we should see what we can get away with. If we can reduce this from the state scope, we should. I'm just not convinced right now that we should wholesale just scrap IP. I think we should be doing these experiments and seeing if the natural, I'll call it a natural first move advantage is robust. And if it is, yeah, absolutely. But can you see an example where it might not? Imagine an example where it might not be robust, and then what would you do in that circumstance?
100%.
I think in that what you just said, if you give just a shorter period, you imagine companies and pharmaceutical companies are working, and they're funding innovation, and many of them do not come to anything. So they factor in the process, the fact that they will be able to monetize the successful drugs out of the hundreds that they're trialing. They'll be able to recover the costs of the ones who are failing. So if you reduce that period where they can make any money, you're only going to make their life more difficult. They are going to do less as a result. So I think that I take the point where we don't want to stop innovation, and we said it about AI and all of that. We need to really think hard. It's a very fine balance that we need to find, the right balance between enough protection so that the financial aspects is still sort of justifiable, and at the same time we don't limit too much innovation with putting too much protections on it. And by all means, I'm totally in favor of removing the state from there. All the state needs to do is just provide a legal system that makes the whole process quick and not too expensive. And most importantly, level the playing field, where you don't have big corporations who have unfair advantages versus single people. I know that's ideally very difficult to do, but that's what a fair legal system should do, not one like we always refer to the US, but that's what normally happens in the US. A big corporation, it's got an army of lawyers, drones you, it throws tons of paperwork at you, and that's it. It just goes on for many years, and that dies because the other person runs out of money or dies.
Yeah, it's a marathon. It's a marathon where they go there. They say, "Well, I've got infinite budget to fight the case, so I'm going to outlast you because you don't have enough money as I do."
That's not fair.
This is why the Free Speech Union is doing an amazing job, because they're saying, "I am the government. I can bury you in legal costs," and they're saying, "Well, hold on, we are collectively helping you fight these unjust claims." But I think, Ryan, you wanted to say something about the whole issue of R&D cost, which is actually a very, very, very tricky subject. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Ben who mentioned, would there be some stuff that weren't invented, right? So, and now you mentioned free speech, and this is another area we might disagree with. So I believe in getting rid of libel, defamation, and slander, because they're actually, I don't think they should exist. But on the R&D point, currently, because of the IP framework we have, I believe, and Stephen Kinsella's pointed out some research on this, there is a divergence of resources away from theoretical R&D towards other areas, only because those areas are more patentable, right? Because of the patent frameworks that exist, scientists are like, oh, I'd really want to research in that. But then because of the current structure, it leads them towards getting pushed towards areas that can only be patented. So that was just an interesting point on that. And then you also mentioned incentives, right? I don't think that's the be all and end all, and that's not my position, right? I am not an incentive, so I'm not a big fan of the Chicago school anymore. I'm much more of the Austrian school of economics. So when it comes to libertarian legal theory, this is exactly what I had a contention with Yaron Brook. Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute, great speaker. I spoke with him when he came to Ayn Rand Con. It's actually a clip of me and him on YouTube, because I asked him, Yaron, if you're the first person to invent the mousetrap today, and it's a huge success in America, and everyone's loving it, then I'm over in the North Pole, right? And then there's a big mice problem. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And then I find a piece of wood and I find a piece of metal and I stick them together. I'm like, oh my God, I could help so many people in my community. And then I start distributing it to people in my community. Currently, under the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is the kind of world authority on IP, that's kind of not right. And then Yaron said, well, it's not that bad, but it should be illegal and it should be penalized. And that is the core of our disagreement. I do not think anyone putting together resources using their own labor and essentially homesteading shouldn't be prohibited from distributing what they've made. And that is my position from a principled libertarian perspective.
Yeah, I know this is the whole issue of saying, is it possible for two people to come up with the same idea independently without knowing of each other? This is actually very tricky because it is possible. It has happened. So, and then again, it becomes like, in legal terms, we call it damnatio diabolica, probatio diabolica, as in it's the devil's. It's devilishly difficult to prove that you actually didn't have anything. You had no foreknowledge of a certain thing, and you came up with it completely independently, because obviously the risk of people trying to play the smart ass, it's actually big. So again, Benny, you wanted to pop in on that, and I'm pretty sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would. I think there's probably a big difference, and I would agree with you really on the mousetrap example. It really doesn't seem right that if you genuinely independently invent something, obviously sometimes difficult to tell. And when I feel like you should be able to, you have at the end of the day put the effort in and the labor, and you should be able to reap the rewards, or the community around you should be able to reap the rewards. I do think, say a novel, I think it's extremely unlikely to independently write Harry Potter, for example. And I feel like if somebody comes out with, I think Barry Trotter is a real thing, I was about to say. But say, literally Harry Potter, just word for maybe the odd word they've changed or phrase. I feel like we can fairly reasonably say that they've just copied J.K. Rowling, right? Do you think in that circumstance, it'd be kind of easier to tell, and we wouldn't really need to worry about this issue of proving one before the other?
Yeah, on this one, Ben, I think I've got something to add. So practically what Ryan said about, that is a limit case, obviously, it's we understand that. But in that case, I think while there's an intention for IP to be protected globally, I think practically you always end up having to fight your legal battles in a specific country. So as long as they are doing that separately in practical terms, they will be probably very likely to be able to sell their own products independently, as long as they don't cross each other and try to sell it in their reciprocal countries. They're very likely to be left alone by the other ones, unless they both try to go global. And again, I think we're going back to the fact of, generally speaking, libertarians and myself, we are not big fans of patents, as that kind of has always a bit of a sort of heavy in bureaucracy and state sort of procedures, while copyrights tend to be something that it's more legal based and argued over in courts, which I kind of feel like most libertarian would prefer to have, would think that is the right place to these kind of controversies to be settled. And I think, there's definitely a place for that.
In an ideal world where the judicial system actually works according to the law and not according to whatever comes next. Yeah. So again, Ryan, you wanted to pop in on something, I think. Just go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, what was it now? Oh, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. Happens to the best of us. No worries. Go ahead.
So, on the point on when it's a copycat. So first and foremost, when it comes to people inventing things independently, those cases are most predominant in cutting edge technology, because you're arriving at essentially a cure, which is essentially a pattern of chemicals, right? From my vague knowledge of chemistry back in A-level, but it's essentially a pattern, it's a formula. So during the COVID pandemic, you had Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, all striving towards essentially the same thing, right? And they all kind of independently arrived at it. And then what happened was production was limited because the first person who did it first, I can't remember which one of the three it was, but they were kind of given the government granted monopoly. Then actually it was kind of like a left-wing kind of social outcry. It was like, hey, we need more vaccines. And then the patent was actually waived to increase production. And then even during this, I doubt they, instead of having, I guess, a gazillion in pounds in revenue, you might get £1 million in revenue. And hopefully it recuperates costs. But in terms of Harry Potter, right? J.K. Rowling, all that stuff. Let's talk about Dracula, right? You know, Dracula, the vampire guy, the Nosferatu film, you know, the silent film essentially based on Dracula, hugely popular. It was actually a copyright infringement. So if it wasn't for Nosferatu, there could have been less sales of Dracula books, arguably. You can go look at the empirical history, but that's just an example of people building on ideas. And copyright in itself, I love talking about, because you know that song, I'm Coming From a Land Down Under, you know, do you guys know that song?
Man at Work.
Yeah, of course.
Man at Work. Great album, by the way.
I don't
Great
know.
album.
Yeah, so I don't know if the guy, unfortunately, is now deceased, because he was struck with a copyright lawsuit, right? Because a company bought the melody to that song. It was like a folklore song. And yeah, they kind of sued Men at Work and won in court. So just because like you've created an idea, I fully believe in copycatting. Like there's nothing wrong with copycatting. And I actually know an anarchist author in America, and I was talking to him about this, and I was like, oh mate, yeah, you obviously intellectual property, right? He's like, yeah, I don't care about that. And I was like, yeah, because at the end of the day, I can copy Bruno Mars. I can sing Talking to the Moon, one of my favorite Bruno Mars songs. I can sing that and violate his copyright if I didn't get the rights to sing that at a bar and a cover. But are people going to come to me or the AI Bruno Mars live concerts? Probably not. There's still going to be an incentive for consumers to want to go and see the original thing. And I think we saw an example of this during the NFT experiment. Yes, it flopped, but it showed anyone could have taken a picture of the NFT and posted on their profile picture. But only one person through the blockchain could prove it was the original. So it shows consumers will find alternative mechanisms to prove originality without having to use the IP infrastructure. So yeah,
I know this is the whole issue. There is an age-old question of saying where you draw the line between a copycat and a homage, as they say that, and say I've been inspired by the Man at Work, by the Police and stuff, and I say yes, that melody was a traditional melody that was popular in Australia. They changed it, they made a different arrangement on that, they put words, they made a video, they made stuff, and then they go and say, no, you can't do that. You can't sing Happy Christmas without paying Happy Birthday to you, because obviously it's still copyrighted. You don't know that, but Happy Birthday to you, it's copyrighted. And I think it was Three Sisters down in the south of America. And every time you're singing that, you should pay something to them. And then again, you see, you get to the limit of where it becomes a little bit ridiculous. But then again, I think, Ryan, you were saying and say, well, it doesn't need to go through the legal channels. And then again, it opens up the whole conversation about, well, does justice have to be public? Or does it have to be private? Can it be private? Adjudication courts and arbitration courts can be private, but it's a voluntary agreement. We agree to do that. And then the government says, no, justice is mine. I'm allowed to say what you do or don't do. I say, well, no, we have an agreement. It becomes tricky. And then again, you say, well, I'm forced to have an insurance. But then again, in America, there are some, I think they're faith-based, they're Christian-based and stuff. They say, you don't have to pay a health insurance. You're paying something, and then collectively, we pay for your operation. You have cancer, you have to have a treatment, it costs $100,000. You don't have $100,000. We will pool the resources and give it to you. And it's been structured, and it's not a health thing, it's not for profit. And it's proving to be quite successful, by the way. I think, Ben, you wanted to say something. I'm stealing your time. Just giving you a head. Yeah, go ahead.
No problem. Yeah, well, I actually kind of want to say I do agree with you in the artistic way. I'll give you the example. My wife and I the other day watched a film called The Man from Earth. I won't spoil it if anyone wants to see it, but the thing, I really enjoyed the film, but I do feel like it could have been so much better. And I think the premise of it is so cool. I won't say anything. You can go away and have a look at it yourselves. But the premise of it is so cool. The premise carries it all the way through the really low budget and weird sound mixing and awkward acting. But it's such a cool premise, and I really would love to see it remade. As much as I kind of hate soulless remakes in general, like I really do want to see this premise done well. So I kind of agree, and with Dracula, for example, because obviously I believe it's in the public domain now. It must be, because I think everyone makes Dracula things now, right?
I think Bram Stoker's did it in 1890s, so it should be in the public
So
domain.
it must have begun in the public domain is it 100 years,
Yeah,
1990s?
should be.
Makes sense. I mean, if I could be convinced that Bram Stoker would still have written Dracula, knowing that the Nosferatu would be made, I'd absolutely, like, all for that. And I do think he said that would have been the difference of about 30 years, possibly, which I think is more than enough. I would even probably say shorter. I think for, say, blockbuster films these days, they make almost all of their revenue, because it's such a turnover. It's like a year, right? I don't. Maybe it shouldn't be that short, but I think there should be a little bit of time where you kind of do have a monopoly. Little pat on the head, well done, thank you for bringing this to the world. But now you share it with everybody else, because we shouldn't keep violating people's rights to free speech and any longer than is absolutely strictly necessary to incentivize innovation. So I think in terms of art, like, yeah, absolutely, I really do want to see, because it's kind of unlikely that the first person to have the idea is the person most qualified to make that the best thing it can be, right?
I think, but then Ben, this opens up another can of worms. Instead of saying yes, fan fiction is great, is amazing if you are completely in line with the whole premise. If you are a fan, chances are that you are in line with the whole idea, with the world building, the ideals, the structure, the philosophy, and that. But then again, you have malicious or slanderous fan fiction. Let's say you are a trans activist, you hate J.K. Rowling, and you're making fun of Harry Potter universe by creating something that is awful, and it's put it in the worst possible light. I am the author. I created this universe. I created this world, this philosophy, and everything. You're slandering the characters, the stuff, the ambience, and I should be allowed to block you. But then again, you say, well, if I am a free speech absolutist, everybody should be free to slander the stuff and to write it, and then the market will decide. And again, you're saying, well, why don't you write something that is talking about a magical school that is not named Hogwarts, but and someone that is not Harry Potter? But why don't you do something similar? Is it limiting your freedom of speech? Or again, it's very complicated and stuff. Ryan, I think you wanted to say something on the subject. I'm assuming. Just go ahead.
Yeah. So no, just a small thing on that. I think you have every right to slander J.K. Rowling, and I'm actually like one of I don't know if you know Roderick Long, so I'm that type of anarchist. So I do believe in quote unquote social justice and all that stuff. And even canceling someone, I think it's the cancel culture is a form of free speech. And it's a form of collective action that's present in any market mechanism. So that was just a point on that. And yes, and in terms of the incentives, again, when I was studying economics at university, one of my teachers, she was actually part of like the creative sector economics government kind of thing. And my piece was obviously against copyright. And for some reason, she gave me a first on that. So she liked it, even though she disagreed with it. But yeah, there were economists who have talked about how there's different incentives, and they're not always monetary. So people create for the sake of creating. People create for clout. People create for a variety of reasons, even if they don't get money. There's so many people I know on TikTok, right? And you'd think they're making a lot of money, but they're actually not. They're making a lot of clout and popularity. So there are a variety of reasons why people would still create. So yeah, just some points on that.
Yeah, I know. This is the whole point of the whole. I think a few years ago, many years ago, I'm quite old like that. And there was this thing in saying you should go again and say, well, get your name out, get your image across, create your personality, your persona and stuff, and then there will be a way to monetize that. That doesn't include, that is separate for your content creation. So you're not being paid, because if you're expecting to be rich from the residuals you get from YouTube or TikTok and everything, good luck with that, because it's pennies. So even if you get tens of millions of views, especially in shorts, it's paying you nothing. But then again, if you're saying, well, I have 100,000 followers, and so I can sponsor something, or I can, endorse some product, or I can do a course to teach you how to become as successful as I am, and then again, you're monetizing that. But if someone is copying your course, then you are very angry, because you say, well, I'm doing this to make money and stuff. So again, it's a double-edged sword. It's competitive and stuff. And I think, Marco, you wanted to say something about the whole legal thing.
Yes. What I wanted to say, I think that there's a point to make in terms of the fact that a protection exists. It doesn't mean that it will be used at all times. So the system where something is protected in courts, and with a court system that actually works, and this is obviously the working assumption here, that first we will have to fix those to have this type of thing work. There is this to say, so you can benefit from a protection and not decide not to use it because it's not worth it, And I think in the end, and we are kind of pointing at it, I think that the main sort of the main fact that changes the way to approach certain things is the value that we're talking about. So if you're producing something that, it's just entertaining people, and you're getting followed, and you're building your persona, and the product is your image, your sort of character that you're building. So I think it'll be very difficult to steal that from you, and whatever you can make up from that, it's always going to be with you, very difficult to take it. But if the products are something that can be stolen and copied, and somebody else could benefit from it, and I think the point is, do you feel that what would need to be assessed in a court is the loss of revenue? Can you demonstrate that by someone else copying this, you have actually lost something in the process? And again, I think this is just a technicality. If we manage to make that sort of legal system work, I think it would eliminate most of the problems that Ryan is talking about. So I think this could definitely work under the right circumstances.
Yeah, I think the whole issue of saying lost revenue, it's really tricky and stuff, because you're saying, well,
how do you prove
can
it?
you really?
No, it's
I know when I was studying civil law in university and stuff, and they're saying the whole concept of lost revenue or lost opportunity, it's kind of like extremely difficult to prove in court, because it can be proven if it's actual, saying, I had the possibility of actually getting a contract with a certain company. Your copyright infringing content stopped me from signing that contract that would pay me £50,000. I'm entitled to have compensation for the £50,000 that I lost. You're not entitled to get compensation on potential loss of revenue. So if I'm slandering you on TikTok because I have a diss, and I'm making a video that says you are rubbish, you're no fun, you're brain dead, whatever. I don't know how young people diss each other these days. And you cannot just go ahead and sue me because say, oh, by doing that, you limited the growth of my channel, so I missed a potential sponsorship, and so you should pay me.
Yeah.
Or because you're disrupting my reputation. Because if I'm saying you're a fake, because you are all for, go Palestine, go whatever, and then you're getting money from a Jewish corporation and stuff, or you're accepting sponsorship from someone that is opposite to what you're saying, I'm saying you're a liar, but I'm stating a fact. I'm not questioning your I am questioning your character, but I'm providing facts. If I'm saying I think you are an idiot, it's an opinion. You're entitled to your opinion, and it's not slander. If I'm saying that you like to go outside schools and do stupid things with children, that is slander, and you're going to jail because it's not true. Again, so I think, yeah, Ryan, you had the whole concept in saying, well, you're not entitled to your reputation. But then again, this goes against the point of slander, because if I am saying that you have stolen money from your employer, this is slanderous because it's not true. And even if it's true, but if it's true, at this point, you say, well, what is the limit? I'm a journalist. If I go there and say, this member of parliament has stolen money, and I have the facts, I have receipts, I'm doing a public service. So it's not slander. But they will try that. So again, what is the boundary between reputation and standard? It's really, really difficult.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I thought Ben was going before me.
You are?
No.
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to interrupt you. Go for it.
My bad. Absolutely. Go ahead, Ben.
Well, I'm going to interrupt the flow now because I'm going to talk about the incentives thing again. So I'm happy to let Ryan take over unless you want to hear my. I'll quickly say, I think the incentives, we kind of have this idea in our head of like a greedy corporation trying to claw as much, and obviously that does happen. Those exist. I'm not going to pretend those don't exist. But I think. I think one of my favorite authors is Bernard Cornwell, the author of the Sharp series. And in the foreword to at least my copy of Sharp's Rifles, he talks about how he wrote the first novel. Basically, his wife got a job in the US. He wanted to go with her, but he couldn't get the visa. He needed to work to get a visa or be able to support himself, but couldn't find a job. So he had this idea. He's going to write a novel. It's a shot in the dark or whatever. He's going to write this novel. And he didn't have much money. I think he said, and he wrote this novel, and it was a big success. The publisher took it off him and ran with it. And I think if we didn't have copyright laws, that publisher would be, legally well within their rights to just take his manuscript, rob the man. And they might change the main character's name to disguise it a little bit. And I didn't really want to live in a world where Bernard Cornwell couldn't have followed his wife to America. I think, when you talk about money and profits, it can feel dirty. I feel that, but it's also people's livelihoods, and often people who, are being creative at a point in their life where they don't have the resources, and if they're not able to get some money for their art creation, they're gonna have to get a proper job, and they might not have the time to create some art that everyone we all learn to love in the world, right?
Yeah, I know this is the whole really, really a negative narrative that has been going around since forever. The whole idea of saying, well, okay, a profit is what I say, I think it was it's the devil's shit. It's something that Catholics used to say. They say it's it's something dirty that shouldn't be talked about. And then in reality, you think, well, the Western civilization just rose up above all others because it was able to invent something like compounding interest and saying that investments you're doing in the economy produce way more, because the wealth of the world, if you're looking at, anyone should get a bit look at the economics history, where you see the whole process of the global wealth was pretty much static. So it was a zero-sum game. So you wanted to get rich, you had to invade your neighbor and steal the gold that they had, steal the slaves, and get more money. But it was the global wealth was more or less similar, all the same. And then from the 1700s on, it just goes up into the sky because it's compounding interest and everything. But on top of that, you say, well, the whole conversation is quite tricky because you're saying, well, the value of your work is what the market decides. Yeah, in a perfect world, that is the case. But if you don't have access because the algorithm stops you from having the reach that you could have, and if people are not aware of what you're doing, you're not being compensated fairly. And so you're saying, well, if you want, you can work a full-time job and then maybe have an extra job and then finding time to write the novel that will change your life. No, most of the times it's not possible at all. But there is this narrative saying where there's a will, there's a way. But most of the time there isn't. If you are unlucky and you're born in, I don't know, in the streets of Niger or I don't know, Cameroon, and you have to work for a living since when you were 8 years old. Yeah, chances are you're not going to become the next,
It takes time to polish your craft. It's not easy to do it overnight. If you're doing it beside something else, it just takes longer and it's more difficult. So it makes it more difficult. Not impossible, because nothing is impossible, but more unlikely, I'd say.
Yeah, 10,000 hours to perfect your craft.
To master something.
It's to master something. It's really difficult when you have a full-time job and everything. Yeah. So again, Brian, you wanted to add something, or I don't know, just go ahead.
Yeah. So so when we talk about like musicians, and actually, if I go back to the reputation thing, I don't believe anyone has a right to profit. I remember, like, basically profit's essentially just an accounting term, right? So I don't think we have a right to a reputation, as like Murray Rothbard also believed. And that's why I don't believe also it's in line with my stance on abolishing intellectual property. But then, when we talk about how do we compensate the average musician, look at today, the average musician is basically doing gig to gig. It's right now in the ecosystem, even on their intellectual property, we have the superstar effect. So one of the economists that I cited when I was writing my thing on this back at university she talked about the superstar effect and how in the music industry, it's like the top top like 5%. I'll send you the source after, but make most of the money in music. And then even if we look at it, the musicians don't even own their work right now. A lot of the time, these superstars, it's the record labels. So like I used to work for CNN, the news company, and we were owned by Warner Brothers, right? And then you have Warner Music, and they own a lot of stuff, right? And you have kind of musicians already being paid pre-production. And it comes back to what I was saying about me not being Bruno Mars. I can, with the rise of AI, I can make a copy of Drake, I can make a copy of Bruno Mars, a copy of Elvis, and it can sound exactly like him, and I can make new music, right? But when it comes to if Bruno Mars was holding a concert, am I really taking anything from him by creating AI music of him? When in reality, I'm just bringing Bruno Mars to more people.
The whole point is that the whole in the incentive structure in the creative industry has been completely lopsided, because we've gone from a time, so before the printing press and everything, being a musician, a working musician, was impossible. Johann Sebastian Bach, he used to have patrons. So he was at the service of the court of Brandenburg, and because then you have the Brandenburg concertos and stuff. Because he was paid to be the organist. He was paid to teach the sons of the Duke, and so it was impossible. Mozart itself, he wasn't making money from his own music, but he was being paid by the emperor, by the bishop, but whatever. And then the printing press and the democratization of music allowed people to sell their sheet music, and your books with sheet music would become super popular. You would make money, but the most money you would make concerts. And then the whole reproduction industry came, and you started to have the first superstars. You had Enrico Caruso, opera singer in the 1900s. He became super big. And then you had all the crooners and stuff. And then recording technology got better. You had the big stars, and then rock and roll came, and so on. And you got the pinnacle. There was the 2000s probably, where you would have the major companies that were making massive amounts of money. Millions of records sold, tens of millions of records sold, and everybody would make a killing. And the recording artists would make substantial amount of money. But then again, you had the problem that most of the money that the company spent to record your album, you were paying for it with your royalties. So if I am EMI and I'm giving you £500,000 to record your album, the first £500,000 of royalties goes to repay the stuff that you spent recording. And then again, it becomes a big problem because nowadays, no physical media is being sold. Spotify is paying you pennies. YouTube is paying you pennies. You are not able to make a living with your recorded music. So you have to go out. But then you have the so-called 360 contracts where the pretty much the recording company, the music company, also gets all of your revenues from your merchandising, from your concerts, from everything. So you are screwed. And you have people that sold millions of records and they have nothing to show for it. So again, this is a problem. And then you say, well, I want to take intellectual property away. I was like, oh, good luck. I mean, it's a game. You were saying, well, academia again, it's kind of a problem. You say, well, if you're not allowed to make money of your own invention because you're not allowed to sell it because you are receiving a salary from the university gets the right to your patent, they are making money of your invention. You are not making it. The inventor is dead. So nobody.
Yeah, in that case, Luca, they actually are making you sign a paper, an agreement that you are ceding to them the rights of whatever you invent, or whatever you are coming up with in terms of research and whatnot. So that is a legal agreement that you've subscribed and as you join. So it's an agreement where you are benefiting from the research structures, from the working with the staff and access to the knowledge they can give you, and the materials and the structures, as I was saying. And but they take the fruits. So you get the glory, maybe, as as we were saying. But it is. I must say that I am enjoying this conversation. It's very tricky. There's lots of different angles, lots of limit cases, and I believe it's fundamental that as a political party we provide certain solutions to this problem, because as we can see from the chat and from the conversation that we're having, it is a big issue that impacts. This got a big impact, and also society is feeling this. The average electoral body is feeling that this is a problem, that there's some kind of injustice there that needs to be rectified.
I know. In reality, I agree. I was very surprised by the fact that we got a lot of feedback from our audience from that, because I was thinking it was a marginal issue. But I think, Ryan, you were saying, and actually in our internal chat, because that's why I'm looking down. I'm not crazy. I'm just looking at the screen right now. You were saying about the whole issue and saying so the House of Lords now it's debating the whole concept of how intellectual property and AI is doing that, and I think it's a big conversation, because I've actually watched a lot of authors and content producers online that are actually debating that and saying, how far are large language models allowed to go with my work without compensating me? And I have the right to my image and likeness. So if someone is doing a video with my stupid silly face and my stupid silly voice, I should be entitled to do something, because it's not me, so it's a deep fake. But so you're not allowed to copy my image and likeness. If I am Scarlett Johansson, I wish, or I don't know, latest great actor and stuff, well, you're not allowed to use my face and put it on your stuff. So I don't know. So, but then again, where is the limit? Where is the threshold you are not allowed to do? So I don't know, Ryan, have you thought a bit about this?
Yeah, so because I know the government put out a consultation a while back. I made a video on it, but yeah, it is something that I think, even though people aren't talking about now, people are coming across, and they don't even realize they're coming across. Sorry, is that me making a noise? Or? Hello?
Not sure who is it.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah.
It was Ben.
Oh, yeah, so I think a lot of people are going to come across intellectual property without actively seeking it out. Because of the rise of AI, big tech is now becoming the AI companies, right? So if you look at the rise of AI, the biggest bottleneck and the biggest thing to stop it will be intellectual property, or the thing to make it go in the wrong way, right? And I think this is why I call out Sam Altman. Sam Altman is a hypocrite. The nature of his product is recycling ideas, yet he's patented his source code, right? And this is why I have no qualms with DeepSeek, even if they did seal Sam Altman's thing. And we briefly touched on academia. So Sam Altman was part of Y Combinator. It's a startup. He was in the same class as a kid named Aaron Swartz. Does anyone know who he is? Founder of Reddit.
No, not really.
So
no,
I made a video on my page. So Aaron Swartz and the founder, Aaron Swartz and Sam Altman, so the founder of OpenAI and the founder of Reddit, were in the same class right next to each other. Now, if you look at Sam Altman, data scraping and violating copyright, yet at the time, Aaron Swartz actually, unfortunately, took his own life because he was hit with a lawsuit. He downloaded, I think, 80 gigabytes of data from JSTOR, academic articles, and apparently he had the intent of distributing it. And yeah, he was fined with like tons of years in jail, $100 million. And yeah, unfortunately, under the weight of the legal pressure, he took his own life. The irony is that now Meta has done terabytes of data and it's being promoted as like, the growth of AI. So it's just, the conversation is shifting, and even the layman, Studio Ghibli, everyone's seen Studio Ghibli, right?
Yes.
Everyone makes comic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Boom. That you have it. Everyone's already talking about it without knowing it's an intellectual property issue. So.
Yeah, I know. I think the whole point of what is going on, the legal system is not perfect in any way, shape, or form, and it's the whole difference is that what every judge will set the thing, and every government will set things differently. So it's not just an international level things. It can very well happen that the European Union decides to treat intellectual property in one way, the US system in another way, the UK system in another way again, and then you are an AI company and you're thinking, okay, so am I allowed to sell my product in your territory or not? Because otherwise I'm open to get sued by that. So it's really tricky. But then again, what kind of an authority you have? Because international law doesn't really exist. So yeah, you can have only agreement between governments, but it's not possible to have a sovereign thing because every legislation needs to include that in its own legislation. So it's really, really difficult to do that. They say, well, the United Nations can say something. Yes, but the United States doesn't have legal precedence over any other legislation. The decision must be implemented by the government, which is really, really tricky. I don't know, Ben, you wanted to add something on that?
Yeah, well, more on the AI thing. I find that especially interesting. I've been reading a lot about artificial intelligence recently. And I wondered, I just wanted to ask Ryan, I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit, and I'm just curious to know should AI and artificial intelligence be treated any differently to a person? Because I think my instinct is say, I think the issue is if you're feeding an artificial intelligence with the Mona Lisa, well no, because that's in the public domain, but say, art that's copyrighted, and you're taking artists' work, and then it's using its algorithm is going to process all that information and spit out something of its own, and in that product that it spits out is going to be some essence, ideas, inspirations from the art that it's seen of other people's. Well, it seems to me that we don't do anything different to that. I mean, when if I created an original piece of art, that's certainly not going to be in a vacuum. That's going to be after I've spent a lifetime looking at other people's art and drawing inspiration and ideas from it. I think the issue really for me is, I believe the issue really is that AI can do it so much faster. And I think that is kind of the issue with a lot of different aspects and dimensions to people's concerns about AI. Perhaps not without reason. But sorry, to get back to the question, Ryan, I just wondered whether you have this impression that maybe AI should be treated differently to a person at all?
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that guy, Cosmic Skeptic, and he was
yes,
on
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I went to the pub with him for a couple hours, and I gave him my position on intellectual property, and he was the only person in the pub. Like, there was like 8 other people sat around us, and he was the only person who agreed with my logic, funnily enough, even though I don't agree with him on certain areas. But yeah, it's good. So that would depend on, do we think AI can be conscious? And no, I wouldn't treat, it's not the same as a person. So I don't think
we are far
yeah,
away
it should never be treated as a person, in my
because
opinion.
that is the whole point. I don't know about you, but every other advertisement I see on the telly and on YouTube and stuff, it's something that is expounding the virtues of AI and stuff, and you're just thinking, it's not intelligence. It's absolutely stupid. It has stupid things that you say is not correct. It's just completely unreliable and stuff. It will be. It's making huge progress. But right now is more of an instrument of chaos more than a tool, because we talked in our conversation. So if you go to the Libertarian Party UK channel, we had the first episode of this podcast was dedicated to AI. So it was a very, very interesting conversation with Patrick Schumacher and another proponent that was a lot more skeptical, another guest. And so you're just thinking in terms of saying, well, it's a real problem to just go there and say AI is not intelligent and stuff. And so if you are a company that said, I'm getting rid of all my customer service people because I will just have an AI bot do that, and it's been a disaster because it was giving false answers and completely ridiculous thinking, and then they had to hire back everyone they had fired, pay them more in order to go through all the answers that the AI bot gave in order to figure out where it was going wrong. It was incredibly unreliable. Nowadays, I think the situation is a bit better, but a lot of companies are starting to realize that completely delegating stuff to AI is a recipe for disaster. So
I think the problem,
Marco,
if I can add one thing,
go ahead.
quickly on AI, I think the problem most often with AI is that it sounds expert. It sounds like it knows what it's talking about, and it's because it's been designed that way. So I think someone, I don't remember if Ben or Ryan, but they said it should never be treated as a person. On that point, I disagree. I think in terms of the interaction that you're having with it, you should be treating it exactly as a person. If someone comes and tells you something that you think is utterly ridiculous, you would challenge it. I think that's exactly what you need to treat AI in the same fashion. You know, if it goes on and says something is, no, this is this way, you should point out the flaws in the logic. You should say, hang on, sorry, but what about this? So you should really using it more like of a kind of sounding board, more like a sort of a creative partner, if you like, and to kind of help you come up with something really new. So help your reasoning rather than just offload your thinking to it, which is unfortunately what most people are doing. They just say, oh, can you do the thinking for me, please? And we are seeing things like people getting more stupid, like that study from MIT, where they have proven that people using AI in the wrong way are making them more stupid. And so I think that one of the biggest dangers of the AI use is that not being able to use it properly. So people needs to be taught how to use it, how to make it a tool that works to aid your growth, not to kill it. And that's the main danger, I think. On that,
I think I agree. I agree with Marco on this one. Ryan, you said that actually in the internal chat you were saying, hold on a second. I was thinking in terms of legal things and stuff, not exactly as a person. But I agree with Marco. You should treat it as your mate at the pub when he's telling you, oh, you should ditch your girlfriend because she's rubbish, and I've heard that she was going out with that dude and stuff. And you would say, if you're trusting him completely, you're a muppet. You're just saying, stop that and say, hold on, let me check. Is she been cheating on me? Is she going out with this guy? Try and get stuff. And so again, if AI is telling you you should dump all of your Bitcoin investment because Bitcoin is not great, and you're doing that, you deserve everything that is happening to you because you're an idiot. So treat it as a suggestion. Again, I'm seeing that. And Ben, you wanted to add something on that. So go ahead.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Marco that people do misuse AI, and I think don't use it for thinking, use it for the mundane things that would take you hours and be incredibly boring. It can do in seconds. So say you're writing an article for Libertarian Party UK, as I quite often do. So I'm not going to use AI to come up with the ideas. I'm not going to use AI to write the articles. What I'm going to use AI for is, can you find me a source to assert this? Or here's this news story. I would quite like to argue this, but if someone, what are the counter arguments? Can you find a list of studies that of the counter arguments? And I'll make a table, and I use it just to gather information that I would apply my intellect to, or use it to bounce ideas off. Like I would never use it as an authority. Like you said, treat it like the bloke down the pub. Like you can bounce ideas off them. They might know more than you, and they will have information you don't have access to, or they can find it faster than you. Imagine, it's the bloke down the pub who could just through books and just pull out random quotes. So, and verify everything, right? If you get a quote, do a Google.
Yes. Absolutely.
Whenever
100%.
Because that's the problem. AI has been designed to always be able to give you an answer, even if it doesn't have the answer.
Yes.
Because this is the way that it's been doing. It's been programmed to go there and say, you should be the ultimate source of authority.
Why did they do that? I don't get it.
Because from a commercial point of view, from a customer point of view,
no, it's just wrong. Imagine this,
as the ultimate authority.
They should, at the end of it, at the end of the prompt, they should put an sort of an index to say, we believe this estimated accuracy of this much, because we had to invent 2/3 of this answer. So check it. They should do it. Honestly,
nobody would you pay £100 a month? Would you pay £100 a month for someone that says, I can give you answers, but you have to check all of them, and probably 50% of what I'm saying is rubbish.
At the end, you have to do it anyway. So even if you pay, I mean, the difference with the paying one is that if you force them to tell you, force them to say, okay, you show me all the sources and tell me exactly what you've used, you will get to the same conclusion, or at least you will see what happened. So why not? I mean, this is, I appreciate they want to sell and they want to make money. That's they have to. I think this is very misleading. So that I think they should find a way to gauge the accuracy. I mean, I don't know if it's even possible. Obviously, I'm not not technically sounded in that, but
Marco,
there must be a way.
If you go under the hood, he will know.
No, of course. That's why they make it available.
It's been instructed not to, because in order to sell it to the guy, and I've read somewhere, I should have done my homework better and stuff, but I didn't know that this would come up. I've read somewhere that pretty much people use AI now as they used Google back in the day, back when the algorithm of Google was actually working. And it was useful, because nowadays it gives you rubbish answers and sponsored links and everything. So
it's all optimized for AI. Now there's another big problem that all the content that is out there is made for AI use, not for human use. So
and I've actually read that somewhere, if you go in the bots on X and every other stuff, pretty much the AI bots are starting to argue with each other. And it comes up with ridiculous things. So you have hallucinations and everything. So again, it's been an awesome conversation, super interesting conversation. We said we should have wrapped this under 1 hour. We absolutely didn't, but it's 90 minutes plus. So I would really like to thank you, Ryan. Again, where can people follow you? Maybe, I think YouTube again.
Oh no!
Sorry, TikTok.
Yeah, just TikTok, to be honest. And yeah, you might see me at like events, maybe in Westminster. You see me, say hi, I guess. Yeah, I'm trying to build like community in London, just of young people who are interested in random conversations like this.
Okay, lovely, awesome. Again, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben, for being here again. Where can people follow you? I think Libertarian Party UK, Facebook, X. Again, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I write the odd article for Libertarian Party, you can find that in the usual ways, Facebook, and I believe the blog site. But yeah, I'm not terribly present on social media personally, so maybe I should change that.
Again, I think that, yeah, Ryan, tell me. So it's _ Ryan, RYON .m. Okay, lovely. If you're on TikTok, just follow him. And again, Marco, where can people find you? So
most often here, I don't. If you are part of the mailing list of the Libertarian Party, by all means, join us. Go to the libertarianpartyuk.com and become a member, and you'll hear from me roughly every month when I manage to send our newsletter.
Okay, I think, Ryan, you said you have a couple of books recommendation. It's very good because I think a lot of people, myself included, are actually scrambling to get ideas for Christmas presents. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, because you were talking about AI. One of my friends, he's actually, I think he might be on the chat, Emmanuel Maggiore. He talks a lot about AI slop. He's wrote a book called Smart Until It's Dumb. So I'd recommend that. I'm actually still yet to read it, but I know it was a really popular book that he wrote. And then, yeah, on the topic of this conversation, Stephen Kinsella, it's probably flipped on your side, but yeah, he's obviously a libertarian anarcho-capitalist. He was a patent attorney for 20 years, and then he wrote this book.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just the point that saying you're actually allowed to just flip the camera back on the settings, but no, it's too late. Maybe for next time. Again, thanks for being here. And obviously, the biggest thanks ever is to our friends, our very lively chat conversation, and everyone that has decided to spend part of this Saturday with us. Hopefully, in the coming weeks, even if December, as I was saying, is a very tricky month for anyone that is doing information and communication and stuff, because people are obviously looking forward to Christmas, to the New Year's Day and everything. So it's very difficult to have guests and everything. We will do our best to actually record some episodes so that we can put them out during the Christmas time and everything. But obviously, if you want to get in touch, join the Libertarian Party UK channel. And if you're based in the UK, because I've seen that we have an international audience, you can join the Libertarian Party UK. It's a great thing because it's a particularly turbulent period in British politics. And we think that a libertarian alternative is very, very necessary. And again, thanking you all. And I will just see you next Saturday, possibly. I'm not sure if live or recorded, but for another episode of Give Freedom a Chance. If you know anyone that could be interested in this topic, send him the link because it really, really helps a lot.